Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see what if Deku was raised to be a villain and became a vigilante instead. Here is short summary. Izuku was raised by a mother who believed he was a villain, because his father was a villain and he had his quirk. He was raised to believe it was something to fear, to hide and stuff down. It takes him years of positive reinforcement to get out of that mentality, but even when he does, Ua doesn't accept him. He hadn't done enough in the assessment, so he went for support with Mei instead. If the heroes didn't want him, then he didn't want them. He would make them regret rejecting him. They would learn to fear him as a vigilante while they taught him how to become one within their own walls. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. If anyone had been looking out their window at 8 o'clock in their middle-class neighborhood, maybe they might have seen the small 5-year-old child sprinting down the street with wet tears streaking down the exposed half of his face, but the world was not on Izuku Midoriya's side. Or so he thought. The boy ripped off his blindfold as he ran, an extra precaution his mother took to keep his quirk in line. But they both knew it was so she didn't have to see Izuku's big green eyes. His big green eyes. As the small boy slowed down, he could see his breath in front of his face. Looking slightly further than that, he spotted a wooden bench looking out on what the boy thought might have been a nice beach at some point but was now just a dump. Slowly the boy made his way over to it, still panting from the run to wherever he was at the moment, but not wanting to stand until he could breathe steadily again. Izuku settled on the bench, watching the waves hit the shore down below him, and sat in silence for a while until he spotted something moving down by one of the giant trash piles. It had been a good 10 minutes since he sat down, his breath long caught, but he sat and watched the tiny figure rummage around for a while out of curiosity. As the person turned around, though, they spotted him immediately. They stared at each other the best one could from a distance before the human down on the beach waved him over. Izuku surveyed the area and closed his eyes as he walked down the stairs with his hands planted firmly on the handrails in case he trips. He heard the person approach as he reached the bottom of the stairs and lowered his head. To his surprise, it was a shrill voice that spoke, clearly a child and not an adult as he thought. "Hi, I'm Mei. What's your name? Why are your eyes closed?" The girl, Mei, waited patiently as Izuku gathered his thoughts. "I'm Izuku and well, if I look at you your quirk will go away and I'll have it instead." Izuku murmured the last part lowly, but it was still loud enough for the girl to hear. "Really? How does it work? Do you have to look directly at me? Oh, you can test one of my babies for me. It's a gas that blurs your vision. And if it helps you can keep it. Will you, pretty please?" Sure," came the hesitant reply. "Are you really that sure this will work though? What if I end up taking your quirk on accident?" "Well, if you take it you can just give it back later, right?" "Well, I'm not sure. I've never used it cause my mommy says it's a villain's quirk, and taking people's quirks is wrong, so I'm not actually sure how it works." Mei looked like she considered it but ultimately went back to her enthusiastic approach. "I'll help you then, but you have to test my babies or the deal's off." The 5-year-olds looked at each other for a few seconds before Izuku said okay, and then the two of them walked towards one of the junk piles, Mei leading Izuku by the hand as he slipped his blindfold back on. "Okay, all you need to do is jump to me, and then we'll practically be at my secret base where I make top secret support items, but I'm only telling you this because you're blindfolded so you don't know where you are." "What if I fall though? We've climbed up a little bit, won't I get hurt?" "I'll catch you if you fall, but you won't. Plus you're only a few feet up, it won't hurt too bad if you did hypothetically fall." "What's hypothetically mean? And how can I trust that you'll catch me?" "It's like what if I think, I heard some guy in a suit say it and he looked professional, so I looked it up. And I'll catch you cause I need you to test my babies, remember? I need you for that and nobody else has agreed to do it, so you're my only guinea pig. You have to promise. Stop being a baby, I promise I'll catch you." "Okay, fine," Izuku whispered under his breath. Izuku gave Mei a warning before finally jumping down and landing safely as promised. "See, you're fine now, come on," Mei exclaimed before taking the boy's hand again and dragging him the rest of the way to her secret base. "Okay, now you stand here while I get my safety goggles." the girl said as she ran off, and take off your blindfold. Izuku did as he was told and looked around in awe as he opened his eyes. There were a million different wrenches and screws all around the room and sharp-looking pieces of metal all over the place, but everything was so reflective that the whole room looked like it was shining under the dim glow of the lamp lights. Okay, I got the things. Don't turn around, I'm gonna set off the gas and it might sting, but if this works we should go play tag on the beach. Okay, May set off the gas without a second thought, really hoping that it would work so she could play with the boy. The gas was made to help in a fight. More specifically, it was supposed to blur a person's vision so bad that they couldn't properly see their opponent and didn't leave any lasting effects like blindness. Wow, May, I can't see anything. Do you think it'll work? Izuku asked, not yet turning around. I sure hope so, it would to lose my quirk. The girl shouted as she jumped into her new friend's line of vision. The two children stood in a brief silence while they waited for something to happen. Is your hair pink? Yep, and my quirk is zoom. Still mine and still functioning. Let's go play tag, you're it, May said before speeding off. No fair, Izuku called out as he ran after her. May scrambled up a mini trash pile, but the green-haired boy fell as he tried to follow. The girl stalled for a second before Izuku slapped her ankle and took off the way he came as if the fall never happened. I'm gonna get you for that, May called out with no malice as she ran after him. The two children scrambled over piles of trash for what seemed like hours, both of them sporting a collection of new scrapes and bruises by the time they had tired themselves out. I don't wanna leave, Izuku whispered quietly after his breath came back. A quiet me either floated through the air before the pink-haired girl shot up from her place in the sand. What if we both come back tomorrow? And the next day and the day after that? The green-haired boy shifted anxiously. You won't change your mind tomorrow. Of course not, the pink-haired girl exclaimed, a little saddened by her new friend's distrust but glad he seemed willing to come back. I've gotta go or my mama and papa will worry, but I'll bring more of that gas tomorrow. Bye, Izuku. The remaining child stood still on the peaceful beach for a moment before taking off the way he remembered coming from. By the time he got home, he was dead tired, falling asleep with a soft smile on his face and hoping the new girl really was as nice as she seemed. Chapter text. 1 year. That's how long it took for Izuku to work up the courage and ask, so now the two children sat in the glorified tent they call a workshop and stare at each other from opposite sides of the table. Well, my babies need me, Izu, I'm a busy woman, May stated loudly. Izuku broke eye contact after a moment and turned around to look at the dangerous table behind them. I want you to teach me how to make babies, the short boy exclaimed, closing his eyes and hoping the other girl didn't think it was a dumb idea. Was that all? Of course I will, but you have to help me, not the other way around, okay? Okay. Izuku was visibly bouncing when he turned to look at May. Really, you'll do it, you're the best, Em. After that the two of them pranced around the workshop doing various little things for May's babies. Izuku was over the moon. He'd been watching May make babies for almost a year now and he finally got to help make some of them. May, the small child drew out all of the syllables in his friend's name. I wanna go play. Okay, fine. But one thing first. May grinned in a way that never meant anything good. Okay, what is it? You're it, the girl called before tapping his shoulder and zooming off. Not again. No fair, May, come back. The green-haired boy called after her while taking off in the same direction. The two of them went on like that for a while before they got bored. Hey May, yeah Izu, you wanna do something fun? The two of them were sporting matching grins as Izuku explained his idea to build an obstacle course. That sounds like an impossible and potentially dangerous idea. I'm totally in. But where do we start? She asked, glancing at the messy beach around them. I dunno, I saw some chairs near one of the piles yesterday. And so that's what they did. The two children ran around collecting anything they could lift, which wasn't really much, but they rounded together about a dozen different chairs of varying heights and one short table they managed to lift together. Lunch break? May asked. Yeah, was the short response. Both of the children made their way back to the super-secret workshop to grab the lunches May's parents made for them. Usually they ate at school and walked to the beach together, but it was Sunday so they came earlier and brought lunch. The two children ate in relative silence before May brought up the challenge they'd been stuck on. So, what did you find? Oh, well, I found this book over by the chair I was grabbing and it looked pretty cool. It's called C++ and it's for coding. Yeah, well, I found this phone and it works and everything. It would be absolutely stupid to say your book is better than my phone. Okay, fine, you win, but I'm keeping my book. Fine. Fine. The two children stubbornly looked away from each other, refusing to look back first. The two friends catch sight of the numerous clocks scattered around the workshop and reluctantly agree that May has to go or her parents will worry. Wait, if you don't make the blurry vision gas tomorrow and try to come in here, I'm dumping glitter on you. The pink-haired girl said before walking out. May, wait, I've never made that. Don't dump glitter on me for having no experience. Mama got mad last time. The boy yelled to his retreating friend. You've seen me make it, you'll be fine. She yelled back before starting to run in the direction of her house. The formula's in the leftish drawer. Leftish, Izuku whispered under his breath. What shelf? Or is it in a desk? How left is leftish? Is leftish even a real word? It sorta is, cause left is a word, right? Does that count? Is it rude to look through all of her drawers? I guess I just gotta do it. It'll be fine, right? Right, okay. The leftish drawer. I can do this. Izuku could not do this. He had looked through all of the drawers on all of the shelves and all of the dressers but still couldn't find the formula before a thought crossed his mind. Did she leave it on the desk? A horrifying thought, really. Between all of the sharp metal scrap paper and blueprints covering the girl's desk, he wasn't sure if it was even worth looking, but he really didn't want to be covered in glitter. The small child looked through his friend's desk for about half an hour before finally stumbling onto the formula. Huh, now I can make it and come back tomorrow without being glitterfeet. The boy pranced around the workshop happily for a minute before scrambling to find all of the ingredients for the formula as well as all the tools necessary for measuring and mixing the necessary items together. The boy stayed at the beach until he was done, heading home around 4 p.m. Izuku's walk home was mundane and kind of difficult once he got closer to his house. The neighbor's kid Katsuki would tattle on him if he wasn't wearing his blindfold, and he was often at the park a block away at this time, so the small child had to put on the blindfold and hope he didn't trip or run into things. Eventually though, he made it home, letting himself in the house and cringing at the gross smell he was hit with. Intent on finding the source of the smell, the child wandered into the living room, spotting his mother surrounded by some ugly-smelling bottles. "Mom?" he asked quietly. No response. Sighing softly, he grabbed a discarded blanket and draped it over his mother before wandering into the kitchen to find cold chicken from some American restaurant wrapped in tinfoil sitting on the table with a sticky note. "Don't forget to eat. Mitsuki is getting suspicious of how skinny you are." Izuku ate and meandered down the hall into his room, playing around with a support item blueprint to help with his quirk before turning in around 8. He drifted off quickly and a small "I love you, Mom" could be heard in the quiet house, unacknowledged by the sleeping woman in the living room. Chapter text. Izuku was up early in the morning, making breakfast, cleaning up, and getting his things together for school. The day was July 15th and the child was getting ready for his second grade classes before meeting with May at the beach. Sluggishly the boy made his way to the local library to do his online classes. His mother pulled him out of actual school a year back because he started telling people his quirk, and all of a sudden Mitsuki was the only mom that would talk to her. The nice lady at the front desk greeted him as he walked in, and guided him to one of the computers like she normally does. Izuku had worn his blindfold to the library on his first day of the online program, and because his mother told him not to take it off, the lady at the front desk thought he was blind. It wasn't so bad really. The program she installed for him reads it to him and he can respond using the talking feature on his cheap headphones. For the most part though, school is easy and the library is quiet. However, he always hears typing from the computer next to him and the person comes and goes at the same time as Izuku. He knows this only because the person has made a habit of wordlessly holding the door open for him on his way in or out, followed by receding footsteps down the sidewalk. Eventually, he is settled at his usual computer next to the ever-mysterious stranger, comforted slightly by the always-present sound of typing. He was sitting with one earbud in listening to his math lecture when he heard a voice from beside him. Do you know the answer to question 4? The voice was smooth but sort of gravely, though it sounded like. What? Izuku knew the question sounded stupid as it fell off his lips, but why did this stranger need his answers? Number 4. For last night's math homework, do you know the answer? Oh, yes. Who are you though? Is there a reason you need the answers to my math homework, or are you part of the ever-present stranger danger May is always talking about? No, I'm not stranger danger. I mean, yes, I am a stranger and my quirk is villainous, and I guess in a way that does make stranger danger, but I swear I'm not. Izuku cut the boy off. The answer is 12.3. There was a brief silence before Izuku continued. I've answered one of your questions, now you get to answer mine. If you knew we were doing the same program for school, why didn't you ever say anything? The 8-year-old thought the question was quite simple, but the other boy took a long time to answer. If you can see, why do you always wear a blindfold? I don't talk and you don't see. I can't really say we're the same, but your mommy isn't nice either, is she? Izuku didn't know how to respond to that, so he changed the subject. You don't have any friends, do you? It was more of a statement than a question, but the child couldn't find a way to make it sound nice. There was an offended huff from his side, but not actual denial to the claim. It reminded Izuku of how May gets when she's wrong or he beats her at Battleship. I can tell that we are gonna be friends, so you're gonna walk with me to the beach and you're gonna like it because May is the nicest, most friendliest person you'll ever meet. I'm Izuku, by the way. Hitoshi, came the hesitant reply. The school work passed by in a blur for both boys, quietly chatting and sharing answers while they wait for school to end. Finally, Hitoshi cried out, "Oh, thank the gods. Is it time?" "Yeah, it's time now, let's go, lead me to your mystery beach." With that, both boys grabbed their things and sprinted out the door. Once Izuku reached a familiar path, he slowed to a walk. How did you know I wasn't blind? I wear my blindfold everywhere, even when it's just me and mommy. My house is near your house and we take the same way home when you don't go to the beach. I saw that Kachan guy yelling at you at a park one day. Something about making you blind so you keep your blindfold on, and then he looked real mean and his hands turned into mini sparklers, but my foster mommy started yelling at me from down the street cause I was late, so I had to leave. I'm sorry I left you with him. He looked more feral than a stray dog and he sounded like one too. Nah, Kachan doesn't mean to hurt me. He just gets mad and he can't control his quirk yet. I'd rather it be me than one of his friends. And the burns don't even hurt that bad, like a mini sparkler like you said. At that moment the boys reached a sign. Faded lettering stated that this was the beach, but Izuku still had his blindfold on for the time being. May ran up the stairs and threw herself at the green-haired child, not taking any notice of the person at his side as she tackled him to the floor without letting him hit his head. You're late. Are you hurt? Why are you still wearing your blindfold? I told you to just use the gas before you got here. Did you lose it again? You know I hate it when you lose my babies, Izuku. I made and put the gas into a handcrafted pepper spray bottle just for you and you lost it. The pink-haired girl would have continued her rant if she hadn't been interrupted. I'm assuming you're May. I would have been pretty concerned if I thought he was pepper spraying himself, so that's probably why he didn't do it. The girl let out a dramatic gasp and received a dramatic sigh in turn. Izuku could feel May's eyes boring into his soul as she shifted to sit on his stomach and look at the imposter. You brought company. There was barely veiled mirth to her words and he could practically see her eyes sparkling despite the blindfold. A friend, and don't get any ideas. No, you can't use him to test your babies. No, you can't interrogate him about his quirk. No, you can't send him home covered in glitter, and no, you can't lock him in the abandoned shed with Cat. Cat was a stray cat they found and gained the trust of. She didn't do well with new people though. You're no fun, Izu. Also, happy birthday. Are we still doing the thing later? Cause I really wanted to do that. May was pushed off of her friend as he stood up and began walking down the stairs, no doubt heading to the workshop as he removed his blindfold and tossed it behind him for May to catch. I don't care who you are. Newbies don't get to know where the super secret workshop is. He finally sprayed his eyes with the gas as his vision blurred. He fell in step between May and Hitoshi, one arm leading the blindfolded boy and the other linked with his skipping friend. He continued talking. And yes, May, we're still doing the thing. I thought he could join us. Do you want to, Hitoshi? Yeah, I guess. No, Hitoshi did not want to join them. Apparently, the thing was jumping from low rooftops on the nicer part of town, closer to Mei's place than Hitoshi and Izuku's. The boy watched as Izuku and Mei jumped fearlessly to the first roof without him. Why are you just standing there? Mei called out. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to have to jump off a roof today. Hitoshi cringed at how scared he sounded. You and Izuku are both big babies. We're not even that high up. I am not a baby, Mei. That was one time and I was like 5. And I was blindfolded, so it doesn't count. Guys, can we get back to the fact that you're trying to make me jump off a roof? Just jump, Hitoshi, it'll be fun, I promise. The first time was like super duper scary, but Mei made me do it and it was super duper fun. With only a little more hesitation, the boy jumped, successfully landing on the next roof without so much as a scraped knee. The 3 kids stayed out until one of the store managers came out and scolded them for making so much noise. Before the 3 parted ways, Mei handed her green-haired friend a medium-sized but heavy-duty backpack, which upon opening contained 3 broken laptops and a book called How to Fix Your Laptop for Idiots. Izuku totally didn't cry when he realized his friend went out of her way to get him a birthday gift. All 3 children slept peacefully that night without any nightmares or worries. Chapter text. It was an early Sunday morning, barely sunrise, but if you looked out your window on the rougher side of town you'd see a smiling boy jumping across rooftops. The neighbors complained at first, but eventually, he got better. He might be a stumbling, stuttering mess on the ground, but once he touched the rooftops he felt like he was flying. To people passing by, the 10-year-old was nothing but a green blur on the rooftops, making so little noise that the locals started to claim he doesn't actually touch the rooftops when he jumps anymore. The boy was in particularly good spirits today despite the rough sleep and lack of coffee. He had finally finished coding in the anti-hacking tracking program for his computer. He had finished building it a year prior, and even though it was a mess of parts from 3 different models and some of the pieces didn't fit together quite right, he loved it. He sped across the rooftops, laptop, a few Rubik's cubes and some food for lunch, all stored safely in his backpack. He had Mei put a tracker in the thing after he set it down and forgot it on a roof one too many times. The tracker, of course, was connected to his watch, and his watch's only functions were to tell time and track his backpack. He made his way to the beach, switching from rooftops to junk piles and all too soon sliding down into the chimney-like structure they put in for him when he accidentally tore a hole in the workshop's cloth and bamboo roof. He stumbled sliding into it the first few times, but he had it down now, going as far as to learn tricks when he got bored entering the same way over and over. Mei, Toshi. The boy was practically bursting with excitement. He heard a distant, "What do you want?" from Mei and got a small grunt from Toshi, who he spotted playing a DS in one of the many spiny chairs. "You're so not gonna believe this, Mei." Finally, the girl walked into the room, goggles still on, wrench in one hand, spray paint in the other. "I'm here. What did you get away with this time?" "First of all, rude, I didn't get away with anything. Second of all, it's done." There was a brief look of surprise, quickly taken over by excitement. "You don't mean what I think you mean, do you?" "Of course that's what I mean. Come look." And look she did. Her best friend had been working on the perfect firewall code to keep anything and everything completely secure for literally like a year, so forgive her for being a little excited. "Izuku, this is great. I can't find any of the little bugs you've pointed out to me on other people's codes. I demand a copy of it this instant." Yeah, I have one for you, and one for Toshi too, since he's always playing those online games on those public servers. It's not as safe as you'd think." With that, he pulled out the decorated thumb drives he kept specifically for Mei and Hitoshi. Mei's was pastel pink with various colored strings wrapped around it in unreadable patterns, and Hitoshi's a pastel purple one with a singular cat sticker on it. "Oh, thank you. You have no idea how annoying it is to have to shut down my computers and reset my passwords every time some hater on an online forum doesn't like my opinion." There was a slight pout to her voice, but both boys knew she genuinely appreciated him taking his time to make her a copy before rushing over. "Yeah, it was no problem really, just don't go selling it to people, secret workshop squad only." "Sir." "Yes sir. The girl shouted as she sprinted off to go download the code onto her hard drive. The boy was a lot more gentle when speaking with Toshi. Neither of the boys are particularly fond of loud sudden noises. Mei was of course the exception. Toshi, do you want this now or should I put it in your bag? Will you help me install it now? The purple-haired boy asked. Yeah, sure thing, and I brought us some lunch for later. I was gonna bring coffee but Mom was asleep and I didn't want to wake her. You know you don't have to explain yourself, Izu. I know how your home life is and you know how mine is. The coffee isn't a big deal. Small smiles slipped onto both of their faces. Yeah, you're right, it's not a big deal. How's the new foster family treating you? The boys fell into quiet conversation as the program installed itself. It's not as bad as the last one. They still muzzle me but none of the physical stuff and the mental stuff I can handle. How was your mom last night? She wasn't too bad. Just a few drunken curses, nothing I couldn't handle on my own. Other than that, you know how it is. Neither boy risked looking down at Izuku's wrist, both knowing full well that if he pulled up his sleeve his arm would be littered with cigarette burns. There was a quiet ding as the file finished installing. Okay, I know you don't like public forums and internet games. Izuku gave him a suspicious glance. Yeah, you're right, I don't like them and I don't trust them. Hitoshi gave a nod in response. Right, but now you've got this fail-proof system to block hackers and keep all your stuff private. Toshi, no. Please Izu. Just one game. All your laptop has on it is code and school stuff. It doesn't even have the stupid pre-installed games that practically come with all laptops. Toshi, you know how I feel about online forums. I don't want to talk to strangers and I don't want to waste a bunch of time doing nothing. Then get a strategy game, for crying out loud, you uncultured swine. If I get a game, will you stop bothering me about it? Yes, oh my gods yes, but you can't keep on with this sad, game-less existence. Fine. One strategy game, what do you suggest? Hitoshi actually had to stop and think about that for a minute. It would have to be something his friend would agree to. Then an idea hit him. Chess. Chess. Yeah, if I was going to recommend you a game, it would have to be chess. Okay, chess it is. Go ahead and install it then. The green-haired boy turned his laptop to face his purple-haired friend. Said friend was practically vibrating with excitement while he installed the free program he used for chess onto his friend's laptop. It was the best one he could find and had the littlest number of issues out of the ones he'd used in the past. After that, the day passed by in a blur. The three friends ate lunch. They actually had to pry Mei off of her workbench. And Izuku spent most of the day pondering a username for his chess account, promising Hitoshi that he would play at least one match when he got home. Hitoshi promised he would check the next day. The program conveniently counted how many games won and lost. Eventually, the friends parted ways for the night, all knowing they would see each other the next day. Chapter text. After Izuku left the workshop for the night, instead of going home like the others, he headed to the park he used to play on as a child. He was sitting on a swing with his laptop open when his username came to him. With that, he finally finished setting up his account and could make good on the promise to play a game tonight. Double-checking that his program was still in place, knowing full well it would be, he clicked the random opponent button. In an office across town, a bored rat twirled around in his chair as the last employee left his office, claiming he didn't get paid enough to deal with this shit, or something along those lines. The boredom seeped in and he began feeling antsy before deciding to look for new opponents on one of his many online chess forums. The rat logged onto the forum, clicking the random opponent button on the lightly colored screen. Opponent found flashed across Izuku's screen as he sat outside in the cool night air. It was nearly 10 and he figured it would take a while for someone else to be online. Clearly, he was wrong. The screen flipped to a digital image of a chessboard and his opponent's name was rat_god. Odd, but he really couldn't say much because his name was green_Loki. Team White flashed in front of Nezu's beady eyes. He loved playing white in chess. The first move was everything and he couldn't help but wonder why green_Loki chose to play black. A few minutes in, he hit his first unexpected bump with this opponent. He found himself having to sacrifice his queen to a bishop to save his king. The wind at the park picked up slowly and he found himself wondering if it was a sign that he should go home. but he was engrossed in his game of chess. There wasn't anything to compare to, but this rat_god guy seems pretty good. You win, flashed across the small creature's screen as he prepared to close out his chess tab. The game had taken 45 minutes, which was considerably long for him, but in the long run, green_Loki wasn't really the challenge he was hoping for. Before he got a chance to close out the tab though, a message appeared in chat. Sorry, I wasn't much of a challenge. I bet you're really good compared to most players. This was my first time playing chess, or any game other than Old Maid for that matter, but it was lots of fun. The rat was baffled. Supposedly, this was the player's first game, but surely that couldn't be true. He'd met pros who couldn't keep up with him that well. He clicked on the small circle in the corner of the page. The profile picture was blank, but the username read green_Loki. He clicked the button to see his stats. Green_Loki. Games won. 0. Games lost. 1. Total games played. 1. Friends. 0. Opponents played. Rat_God. Okay, so maybe he was a little bit curious, but how could he help himself with such an enigma sitting right in front of him? So what if he watched the person's stats screen steadily change over the course of an hour and a half? So what if he couldn't help but want to play them again as he did his work and kept an eye on the screen? It really isn't a big deal. That's what he told himself well into the night before he finished his work and could properly snoop. By now the stats had changed. It was easily past 12 for him right now, but green_Loki didn't have a location set. Green_Loki. Games won. 13. Games lost. 1. Total games played. 14. Friends. 0. Opponents played. Banana_muffins, Fogstone squid, Ant rocket cat, coffee cake pie, the thing tea, peach_yogurt, spider_sauce, werse_panda, ice cream egg, pure pumpkin spice, squirrel_turtle, cranberry_Olaf, finding Nemo before sunset, rat_God. Okay, so maybe a little bit of snooping was in order. 13 wins in a row is suspicious for a new player, and so Nezu got to work. He tried tracking the device first to see if green_Loki lived in the same time zone as him, but he was blocked, and just when he got around the normal anti-hacking programs he hit a custom firewall clearly meant to keep information in and unwanted visitors out. The firewall is good. It's got a few kinks he thought he could slip through, but the no doubt paranoid person on the other side of the screen had another firewall, built the same as the previous one with much fewer issues, and the ones he could find he couldn't get anything from. It almost looked like whoever made the program for green_Loki just forgot to delete the first firewall. The curious creature kept trying for a little longer before he received a message in the DMs of the chess app. Will you stop hitting my firewall? It makes my laptop ping every time and it's getting really annoying really fast. Before you deny it's you, I traced the IP address to this account, so please just stop trying to hack me. The message was from green_Loki. Play another match with me and I'll leave you alone for tonight. Fine. The wind was defiantly a sign to go home. He knew for sure once he heard Kachan's voice. He didn't know why the boy was outside this late, but he wasn't about to stick around to find out. Izuku quickly gathered his things before quietly running off to settle on a nearby building he knows has an outlet to plug his laptop into. He finally got around to clicking the request match button on rat_God's profile once he found a comfortable place to sit. This particular roof was nice because it had an overpass that had an outlet and protected him from the elements. The game with rat_God went on longer than Izuku would have liked, but he was kind of glad it was so late because he was dead tired and that meant some actual sleep for a while. However, it still bugged him that this rat_God guy could get past his first firewall. Sure, it was designed with bugs so that people could get through to the next level like a game, and sure there were 3 levels, but still. Rat_God typed, "Play me tomorrow." In chat, and Izuku couldn't help but think his laptop would ping all day if he didn't. "I'll be on at 4. Izuku slept better than he had in days. Nezu smiled at the possibility of a new, very intelligent friend, and Aizawa at home in bed with his husband got a terrible feeling in his gut that tomorrow was going to be hell. Chapter text. Monday morning rolled around. Izuku got a solid 5 hours of sleep and was feeling surprisingly well rested. He was out for his usual morning run on the rooftops when he spots someone on a nearby roof with their back turned. As Izuku approached cautiously, he noticed the figure was looking down over the edge. Izuku spoke up in a careful voice as he closed his eyes to avoid taking the figure's quirk. "Why are you up here?" Faintly in the bright light, through his eyelids, he saw the figure's darker outline flinch. "Just leave, it doesn't matter." Izuku took a miniature step forward. The 10-year-old wasn't quite sure how to approach this. "You're planning to jump. I can't stop you, but why?" He saw the dark outline shift, no doubt to look over the edge a little further. "I hate my quirk. All it does is hurt people and make people hate me. My own mother can't stand the sight of me anymore and my friends all hate me. I wish I could just get rid of it." At that, Izuku stilled. Could he help him? "If, hypothetically, I could get rid of it for you, would you step away from the ledge?" "Nobody can just take it, and why would they want to? It's a villain's quirk. Who would willingly take a quirk that steals people's hearing just by looking at them?" The figure was now closer to the edge. "I would take it. Do you want me to? Would you like to get rid of it because I can and will take it if you hate it that much?" "Do it then. This quirk is a curse." Izuku opened his eyes. Now he could see that the boy was crying heavily, his small figure shaking, and he looked malnourished. The boy gasped quietly, no doubt feeling his quirk leave his body. Quickly Izuku closed his eyes again so he wouldn't steal the boy's hearing, but taking a quirk opened up a lot of new options he didn't know existed. Quickly he spotted a category called inactive and mentally dragged the quirk there before reopening his eyes. "Can you hear me?" Why yes, how did you do that?" "It's a curse of my own, I guess." The boy seemed like he was debating something with himself before he launched himself away from the edge and onto Izuku. "Thank you so much." The boy sobbed out. "It's really no problem. What's your name?" "Oh, right, my name is Kanashi and I'm 7, what's your name?" Izuku stood still for a moment, idly rubbing the child's back. "You can call me Loki. I don't have one for you now, but if you want I can give you my email and give you a new quirk later, though I'm not sure where I'll get one." The tears in the boy's eyes turned to stars like he'd never been crying in the first place. "Really? Do you mean it?" Izuku let out a small laugh. "Yes, I mean it. Would you like me to?" "Yes, please." Izuku handed him a piece of paper with the email he created for his chess account on it. "If you ever feel the way you did today, you can email me a meeting place and I'll take you away from it for a little while, okay?" "Okay, thank you, Loki. Mommy is gonna be so happy, bye-bye." The boy left quickly, running down the stairs dangerously fast. A soft smile slipped onto Izuku's face as he got back on track with his run. It was barely 7, but he had to make Toshi a lunch before he headed to the library for school. He made 2 lunches before sprinting to the library so he wasn't late. He met Toshi at the door just in time, smiling so hard his face hurt. He began signing as fast as he could without messing up to tell Hitoshi about the boy, leaving out the part where he took his quirk and just telling him that he talked him down from the edge and gave him his email just in case something happened. To say Toshi was surprised at his story was an understatement, and he couldn't even express it because Izuku was wearing his blindfold already and he couldn't exactly yell about the particular subject in the middle of the street. "How the heck do you always have time for stuff like this?" Hitoshi Whisper yelled. "You had time to get halfway through your morning run, talk down and befriend a suicidal 7-year-old, finish the aforementioned run, make both of us lunch, avoid your mother, change out of your running outfit and into normal clothes, pack your bag for the workshop later and then take the 20-minute walk here, and you did it all within an hour and a half." He was back to a normal voice now, no longer whisper yelling. "Yes. The walk doesn't take that long if you run, Toshi. Well, forgive me for not having your absurd stamina and speed. Also, have you ever heard of a crowd? Believe it or not, it's very hard to walk through in the morning." "No crowds on the rooftops, Toshi." Yeah, whatever. Did you play chess yesterday?" "Oh yes, actually. I played a few rounds with Rat_God and then a few other opponents." "What's your deal with this Rat_God guy? You've been playing games together for a year and you still play him every day?" Izuku shook his head yes in response to the question. "That was a rhetorical question. My real question is, why are you still playing with him?" The boy groaned but made no move to stop his friend from taking the laptop when he reached for it. Hitoshi opened the chess app he installed a year prior and checked the stats before moving on. Going further, he clicked the My Friends button, seeing rat_god and clicking on the chat button. What the heck are these conversations? Oh, yeah, rat_god has some interesting conversation starters. Izuku gradually forgot about the impending chess match as the day went on, sitting in the workshop wondering mostly if there were kids who would love it if he took their quirks or if Kanashi was a special case. Before he knew it, it was 4:15 and his laptop was pinging like crazy. He was confused at first before realizing it was past 4, and rat_god was most definitely hitting his firewall to get his attention. With a groan, he opened the chess app. Chill, I'm here. There is literally no reason for you to keep hitting my firewall, you're just being annoying at this point. I apologize, I was just trying to get your attention since you weren't responding in chat. You didn't forget about our match, did you? Izuku rolled his eyes at the message before hitting request match, so rat_god would stop pestering him. After a few games, they were just conversing in chat rather than playing chess. The chess match was meant to be a tiebreaker between the two of them, but when the first game was stalemate they had to play again. It was all good and fine until they decided best of 3 and ended in a tie again. Green_Loki. Can I ask you a question? Rat_god. Shoot. Green_Loki. I looked at your profile and you win all of your games but never play an opponent more than twice, so why do you keep asking me to play with you? Rat_god. A good question, Loki, but I can't answer that quite yet. Can I ask you a question though? Green_Loki. Yeah, I guess. No promises, I'll answer though. Rat_god. That's fine. I just wanted to ask who coded your firewall for you and if you could give them my email for me. I have something I'd like to ask of them. Green_Loki. I made the firewall. What do you want? Rat_god. Ah, that's even better. You see, I work in close relations with a few heroes. They've been a little bit concerned with some security issues lately. I was just wondering if you could program something similar to your firewall for them. I'd be happy to assist you, of course. Green_Loki. I guess I can do that. I need a location and time for us to meet up, and I have personal stuff until 6 Sunday through Friday, but I assume chess hours are on the table. Rat_god. Yes, chess hours are fine, 10 p.m. tomorrow. Green_Loki. Yeah, that's fine. Where are we meeting? Rat_god. I believe UA is a suitable venue for us. Does that work for you? Green_Loki. Green_Loki. Yeah, that's fine. Izuku sat in bed at home, wondering who the heck rat_god was that made UA an option for a meeting place. Nezu wondered if Green_Loki had ever heard of stranger danger, and the UA staff wondered if the cackling over the intercoms was accidental or not. Chapter text. The next day passed quickly for Izuku. He finished all of his homework at the library and helped Hitoshi with his before they headed to the workshop to hang out with Mei. Mei was frustrated. She had spent all day at school with her 5th grade teacher. The woman just wouldn't leave her alone. Do you need help with math? Do you need help with English? No, obviously not. I don't need help with your basic multiplication and spelling tests. Will you be quiet? They all made it to the workshop at about the same time, Hitoshi and Izuku getting there a few minutes earlier because the library is closer to the beach. Izuku quietly worked on the base structure for one of his blueprints next to Hitoshi, being careful not to disturb his game while he worked. Mei was at the table nearest to them working on a project of her own. Izuku was working on something simple. He couldn't do wiring at the workshop because he was careful to keep his vision blurred. Meanwhile, Mei was working on some sort of chemistry project. The workshop was quiet aside from the clicks of Izuku's screwdriver, the fizz of Mei's chemical reactions, and the clicks from Hitoshi's game. None of the three felt the need to say anything lest they break the quiet calm that had settled over them. All too soon it seemed 6 o'clock hit. It had been their departure time ever since Mei's parents said she had to be home by 6:15 every night or they would stop letting her go. Izuku walked Hitoshi to his house, his mood greatly dampened when he saw Hitoshi put his muzzle back on before his foster mom could see him. He would never know how it hurt Hitoshi in turn to see Izuku put on his blindfold, and the purple-haired boy was glad his friend couldn't ever see the expression on his face. When Izuku arrived home, his mother began yelling at him as she tended to do when she wasn't sleeping, starting with her always asked question, "Where have you been?" followed too quickly by more yelling for the boy to respond before she tired herself out 20 minutes later, muttering, "Leave me alone," and taking her place on the couch. As he trailed down the hall to his room, he straightened a crooked photo of his mother on the wall. She never wanted to tell him who the man in the picture was, but he had his suspicions. It was the only photo his mother left up, and she looked genuinely happy in it. Her hair was longer and her figure slightly thinner as she stood with an unknown man on a hill. The photo looked like something out of a movie, with the shimmering city lights in the background, the atmosphere heightened by the setting sun. The picture was taken when his mother first moved back to Japan, a year before Izuku was born, but that was all he knew about the picture. Continuing down the hall, he reached his room. Opening the door and stepping inside reveals that his belongings remain untouched, nothing had been moved or taken. The frustrating blueprint he'd been working on still sat innocently on the hardwood floor by his window, and his mattress still had all of its blankets and pillows. It was nearly 7 and it would take nearly 45 minutes to reach UA from his house, and the green-haired child nearly broke down when he realized he couldn't walk in there as Izuku Midoriya, the officially documented quirkless 11-year-old boy. And so he hides it. He hides the fluffy green hair on top of his head with a beanie and a hood. He hides his uncomfortably thin stature with a loose hoodie that would also cover the freckles running up his arms. He hides his face with a green face mask and his eyes with some colored contacts May gave him a while back. He glances at the clock to find that it was 8 already and realizes that he'll have to find a way in. UA security isn't just going to let in a wandering hooded figure for no reason, and he didn't particularly feel like socializing with heroes at a hero school for no reason when he had places to be. Luckily Rad_God had sent him a form to fill out. It was a guest access pass for UA, one-time use only. He was going to fill out the form for the pass. He swears he was planning on doing it, but how could he pass up entry to UA whenever he wanted, one time only, when for now he could just test out May's latest invention? She had told him to test it for her, so really he was just being a good friend when he stopped and grabbed the jet shoes from the workshop on his way to UA. He guessed they didn't have people going over their walls often, but was still disappointed when after minutes of waiting for it to be exactly 10 p.m. he went right over the gate with no issues. Rad_God had sent him a map with the path to his destination on it, and he reached it at 10:03 with no problems. The door opened ominously the moment he touched it, and he wondered what kind of monster machine it took to haul that door out of its place before stepping into the room. Izuku wished he could say he didn't stand stupidly in the doorway when the principal of the prestigious hero school chirped out the words, "You must be Green_Loki." He stumbled over his words. Yes. I mean yes, yeah, that's me, I'm him. Great. Why don't you have a seat? Sure, what kind? Izuku was bluffing. It didn't matter what kind, he didn't know the first thing about tea, but the principal across from him seemed pleased with the question. It's just black tea, sugar. Yeah, sugar is good. Why am I here? I mean you're Nezu, the principal of UA. You could easily make your own teachers a firewall better than mine without my help, so why am I here? The rat settled in his seat across from his guest. Well, I suppose I want to see what you can do, Green Loki. Will you do it? Izuku cringed inwardly at being called by his chess handle, but he was sure he wanted to do it now more than ever. Just Loki is fine if we're going to be working together on this. He tried to keep it together and not let his ever so expressive eyes give away his excitement and anxiety. Nezu was pleased with the outcome, and it was evident in his voice when he responded. Very good. Just Nezu will be fine for me too. Shall we discuss the project now? Izuku stayed at UA well past midnight to discuss the specifics of the project with Nezu. He was overjoyed at the idea of UA's principal taking interest in him. He knew the rat was smart, he'd read articles and the likes, plus the creature had gotten through his first 2 firewalls in the 4 days he'd known him. By the time Izuku left he was exhausted, but slowly he made his way back to his house. He stumbles through his open bedroom window, careful not to step on anything sitting there, and is about to fall into bed when he hears a quiet ping sound from his laptop. His artificially blue eyes widen as he reads the email, and before he knew it he was back out the window. Chapter text. The wind blew hard and stung his mostly covered face as Izuku jumped across the rooftops hurriedly. He shivered violently as the wind tore through his clothing and he could smell the hovering scent of rain in the air. The weatherman had said it was going to rain and he had made it all day with no problems, however there was no way he was turning back now. He reached his destination within 5 minutes and it had started sprinkling sometime along the way. The quiet wails echoed through the silent night and Izuku knew instantly who they were from. He stopped in front of Hitoshi's window. Not hesitating lest his friend slipped further, he knocked softly on the window. After a moment, when the window didn't open, he pushed the glass ajar and stepped into the room. Hitoshi was adjacent from him in the corner of the room, crying and tucked in a ball. Just to be safe, the green-haired boy sprayed his eyes with more gas before moving closer to his friend. "Toshi," the boy asked tentatively, "can I come closer?" A small nod was given and without a second thought Izuku was sitting in front of Hitoshi, backpack slung to the side. He had grabbed it in case he ended up staying with his purple-haired friend for the night, but it was looking more likely that Hitoshi would be the one packing a bag. "I'm gonna go see if she's still here, okay?" Izuku said as he began to stand. "No." Hitoshi's hand was on Izuku's arm in a second and he was trembling again. "Don't go, she'll hurt you. I don't want you hurt. I'll go check. If you check she'll get mad and hurt us both. If I check she'll just hurt me, and then you'll be okay." "I'll go check." The purple-haired boy stood on wobbly legs and took a few steps before he collapsed onto the floor once more. "It'll be okay, Toshi. I'm not gonna get hurt, and if I do I promise I'll come right back and you can wrap my wounds. Is that okay?" The shaking boy nodded hesitantly and loosened his grip on his friend's arm before letting go entirely and letting his hand drop. Slowly Izuku made his way down the hall towards the staircase. He knew if Toshi's foster mom was going to be there, she was going to be downstairs. Peeking around the corner he saw nobody, and as he walked into the open area below he was relieved to find she wasn't there. "She's gone, Toshi," he said quietly as he stepped back into his friend's room. The other boy quite literally sobbed in relief. Faintly Izuku could see the red lines on the other boy's face from where he's sure Toshi's foster mother had him muzzled. "Izu?" the crying boy asked carefully. "Yeah, Toshi. I don't wanna stay here anymore." His tears were finally coming to a stop and Izuku planned to keep it that way for the rest of the night. "I know, Toshi. You can pack a bag and I'll sneak you into my room until we can find something more permanent." The green-clad boy enveloped his friend in a soft hug, scared to hurt the boy despite the insistence that he wasn't hurt. "Why can't you and me just run away together with May and be happy forever? I heard my last foster family talk about it. It called eloping or something. You run away to be happy together and you don't tell anyone where you're going or why." Izuku let out a deep sigh. He wished they could do that, just the three of them happy with no worries. "Maybe when we're older we can elope together, but Maymay has a family and you're gonna find a good one to take care of you, and my mommy is gonna tell me what I'm doing wrong so I can fix it, and then we're all gonna be happy." "But what if it doesn't go like that and it's all bad and we're never happy?" "You're both gonna be happy, I can feel it. Pack a bag, Toshi. I don't want you to come back here until this is all better, okay?" "Yeah." Unfortunately, Izuku could not catch a break, and as they were about to exit the two-story building there was another ping from his backpack. "Give me a sec, Toshi. I have to make sure this isn't important. Usually you're the only one who emails me this late." The other child was silent as a laptop was pulled out of a backpack and opened. As quickly as it opened it was closed and Izuku took off with nothing but a brief explanation. "Kanashi needs me. I'll be back in no longer than 45 minutes. Your foster mom won't even be home yet. I'm so sorry to do this to you." The backpack was dropped with the laptop inside as the shorter boy took off out the window, and after a few minutes of debate, Hitoshi decided to open the laptop and read the email himself. After unlocking the laptop with his friend's password he opened the email received most recently. Wednesday, November 24th, 2:38 a.m. Mr. Loki, I don't know if you were kidding or not, but something happened and my mommy is taking these weird pills and she did things and it hurt really badly and now I am bleeding and I don't know how to make it stop and I can't reach the lock on the door so I can't leave and my head feels fuzzy and I didn't know what to do, so if you weren't kidding, will you come get me at 532 Hemlock? It's near the store that has the gas pumps outside. Hitoshi curled up in his comforter without a sound as he tried to process what he just read. Izuku made his way across the rooftops as quickly as he could. He knew the place Kanashi was talking about only because they had been on the building across the street from it when the two had first met, but he remembered the path well enough and it thankfully wasn't far from where he was. The streets were quiet and when he spotted the correct street sign he slowed down lest he miss the right house and take longer to get to the child. Loki. Izuku spun around wildly. The sound had come from the second-story window of the house to his left. Kanashi. The small boy's whole body seemed to sag with relief once he confirmed that it was in fact his savior walking down the street looking for him. Where's your mom? Is she still here? And just like that, the tension in the boy's spine was back. He stiffened like a log and wouldn't look at the boy standing out on the street. His voice lowered and he seemed fearful, as if he'd forgotten the reason he'd called the other there in the first place. She's downstairs. There was no time for the front door then. Do you want to play a game with me? Izuku had a plan, but they'd have to be sort of quick about it. I guess. Kanashi seemed confused at the mention of a game. It didn't seem like the right time for a game, but Loki knew what he was doing right. Before we can start, I need you to do something for me, okay? Izuku received a slight nod in return. I need you to unlatch the thing hanging below your window. Can you do that for me? The 11-year-old had never been more thankful that their side of town failed to put insect screens on the windows. Yeah, but won't it fall if I do? Just trust me, I'm gonna catch it. The latch made a quiet sound before the fire escape ladder fell and Izuku caught it before it could make a loud noise hitting the floor. That ladder looks scary, Loki. That's okay, I'm gonna come up to you, but we have to be quiet, okay? Okay. The boy clad in green climbed the fire escape quickly and entered through the window. What are we playing though? We're gonna play tag. Does that sound good to you? The boys played tag quietly in what Izuku assumed was Kanashi's room for a few minutes before he finally made his effort. He slid down the fire escape without a problem but saw Kanashi, who is it, stall at the top. I can't make that, Loki. It's scary and too high up. Now I'm never gonna catch you. How are you ever going to reach your dreams if you're too afraid to live among the stars? You're gonna do great, and if you fall I'm gonna be right here to catch you. Oh okay, but will you really catch me if I fall? You promise you will? I promise, and once you get down the first one you're going to be so focused you'll forget all about being scared. With that, Kanashi slowly made his way down the ladder, mother undisturbed somewhere in the house. The child was out soon after that and Izuku carried him back to Hitoshi's house to collect him before the three children all managed to sneak through Izuku's window and finally get some sleep. Chapter text. Down left up right down left up right down left up right down left up right. The chanting in Izuku's head was cut off by a movement at his side and he abruptly lost his progress on the Rubik's Cube as a soft voice cut through the quiet room. Loki. Kanashi's voice dripped into his ears as he put down the cube and turned his head to look at the younger boy. Yeah. Izuku kept his voice quiet and was careful not to shift his body towards the newly awoken boy as to not wake the other boy curled into his side opposite Kanashi. Where are we? We're safe. She's not going to hurt you anymore. I'm going to make sure of it. Hitoshi shifted next to him and woke as Izuku reached to wipe the dry tears from his face. Izu. Both of the other boys could hear the sleep in his voice and couldn't help but think he should probably get more sleep. We're at my house, Toshi. She's not here and she's not going to be able to get you here either. I promise. Hitoshi looked as though he was about to respond when they all turned to the noise of the front door being slammed open. Hide, both of you. If she sees you here it's gonna be bad for all of us. Get in the closet. Don't make any noise and don't come out no matter what you see. Kanashi was too young to feel the need to argue about it and dragged the other 11-year-old boy into the closet with him, shutting the closet door just as the room door slammed open. Through the slits the two could see the green-haired boy fix his eyes on the floor and then close them completely. The woman, his mother, looked deceptively loving as she paced forward towards Izuku, and only one of the three knew that it was out of fear for her quirk, not out of love for her child. Izuku didn't make a noise as he was pulled into a hug, and the wrestled haphazardly into a blackout blindfold. "I told you to wear it, sweetie. Always. Did you forget?" Kanashi was confused as to why Loki is scared of his mother. She seems nice. Hitoshi, though, he knew that voice, that kind of manipulation, was exactly what he was on the receiving end of at his last foster home. It really was the worst, because every time you know what's going to happen, and every time you can't help but hope maybe this time it's real, maybe it will be different this time. Seeing it from another perspective, it's so clear it's not going to be different. The woman was tense, her shoulders drawn back, and the hand not on her child's shoulder was curled into a tight fist. Regardless, he could see the look on the other boy's face. He recognized it. It was the same look he saw in his own reflection whenever they used to beat him in that mirrored hallway. That look of hope, and seeing that look on his face made it impossible for the lavender-haired boy to look away from what happened next. Inko's hand snapped forward and her fist landed straight in Izuku's stomach. The boy doubled over but still didn't make a sound. "Light me a cigarette, won't you, baby?" Her eyes were furious as she watched the boy fumble to find a lighter with his blindfold on. "Hurry please, Izuku." Finally his hand landed on the familiar shape of a lighter, sitting innocently on his desk. He approached his mother slowly. It was as though he was approaching a wild animal, and Hitoshi vaguely registered Kanashi curled into a ball with his hand over his mouth. He really did feel for the boy, but he couldn't take the time to comfort him when he may need to dress all the wounds that Izuku will no doubt be trying to hide from him once this is over. So he needs to see it all. He needs to see it all so he can fix it all. Outside of the closet, Izuku got Inko's cigarette lit and she took a drawl of it, blowing the smoke back out in her son's face. As he began to cough, the woman laughed. It sounded like tinkling glass, the same way his friends did, and it hurt to see such similarity between him and his abuser. It didn't take long for her to finish her cigarette, and Hitoshi knew full well what was coming next. For this part he did bend down and pick up Kanashi, facing the 7-year-old away from the scene and rubbing his back. Then the tears came. "Mama doesn't have an ashtray, baby. Do you have something I can use instead?" Izuku looked smaller and more feeble than his friends had ever seen him as he slowly shook his head no, and Shinso couldn't help the tears that ran down his face as the older woman pressed the bud into the small child's arm time after time, claiming it shouldn't be warm or it might burn something important. "It's fine," Hitoshi thought. "I knew this was something he went through. He's going to be okay. I just need to keep quiet for a few more minutes." Those were the longest minutes of his life. Watching his friend sit there, the smallest he's ever been, taking everything she was throwing at him, it was like he was a whole different person. None of his bite, none of his sass, none of his passion or determination. It was gone. It wasn't him. Hitoshi burst out of the closet the moment he was sure she was gone. Watching Izuku be hurt was nothing compared to the pain he felt when the green-haired boy flinched violently away from his touch. The front door slammed. From what little Izuku had told him, she was likely off to work. For them that means up to 10 hours to find a place to go. God knows he is not going to let the three of them stay here. Chapter text. Hitoshi was the only one awake enough and stable enough to call Mei. He made his way down the hall to the Midoriya family phone and dialed the number slowly. Mei picked up on the first ring. "Zu, are you there?" No, this is Shinso. We have a bit of a situation right now." His voice quivered and he could hear Mei shuffling on the other end of the line. "What kind of situation?" The fear in her voice was very apparent, and he was suddenly very glad he was the one handling this. When Mei gets tense, Izuku gets tense, so it's best this way for sure. "Me and Izuku need a place to stay. +1, you don't know him and neither did I until last night. He's 7. I can ask my dad, but I'm not sure how long he'll let you guys stay. If it was just 1 it would be fine, but an extra 3 is kind of a lot. We just need 1 night, maybe 2. Just to figure out what we're going to do from now on. I was thinking maybe it's time to expand the workshop. I'll ask and call back. Tell Izu I love him and I love you too." There was a beep and the call disconnected. The phone felt too heavy in his hand, and all of a sudden everything felt like too much, but somewhere inside himself he knew he had to keep it together. For his friends. Hitoshi walked back down the hallway and couldn't help but notice the photo hanging on the wall. She looked like a whole different person. The smile, the hair, the body type, the eyes, it didn't match up. What went wrong? He was brought back to the present by a breathy sob. He almost wouldn't have heard it if Izuku wasn't curled up against the wall cradling Kanashi in his lap. Izuku looked up hopefully, but the tears continued to fall down his face regardless. May. She's asking. Worst case we stay in the workshop. I figure we can expand it some, clean up the beach a little, put some beds in and call it home for a little while. Just until we figure things out. I'll pack a bag. Izuku slowly rose from the floor, careful not to jostle Kanashi, who was fast asleep on his shoulder. He was ready to go in less than 5 minutes. He grabbed all of his clothes, his laptop and flash drives, his Rubik's cubes and a few miscellaneous items he had lying around on the floor. It was every bit of personality he had been allowed in his room packed into a medium-sized backpack. They were quiet on the walk to the beach. They had waited half an hour and there was no call, but they were meant to meet up anyways, and it was as good a place as any. Sure enough, they found May in the workshop making her way about in a frustrated manner. She didn't notice them for a solid 5 minutes until she finally had to turn around to grab a can of spray paint. When she saw them, she dropped the can and launched herself at Izuku, jostling the smaller child he was holding awake but not feeling even slightly bad about it. Jesus Christ, Izu, you two have me worried sick, and then you don't pick up the phone. Take your sweet time over here, make no attempt to contact me. Why didn't you say something if you had needed a place to stay? We could have figured something else out. Do you two think you're protecting me or something by not telling me anything? Because you're not. You leave me worried sick all the time and it's ridiculous. I'm tired of trying to figure out what's wrong with you two all the time, so for the love of God tell me what's been going on with you guys. She stood there, and she probably would have stood there all day if Izuku hadn't spoke up. My mother was. You don't have to tell her anything if you're not comfortable. She'll be fine if you tell her later, I promise. I want to. Please don't interrupt me. I just need to tell her before I can't. May. My mother was a good person. That's the first thing I feel you should know about my situation. In some aspects she still is. She provides dinner for me so I don't starve, and she keeps a roof over my head. She makes sure I shower, and she provides me with an education. It was obvious something bad was about to come out. May just wasn't aware of how bad it was going to be. But she also drinks. And when she drinks she likes to break things, so sometimes I come home to broken glass scattered around the floor, and when she's awake she makes me scrape it into a dustpan with my hands. May was crying now. They all were. May had no idea. She thought it was one time. Why hadn't he said anything if it was this bad? And when she isn't drinking she's smoking, and when she smokes she likes to put out the buds on my arm. It's why I'm never wearing short sleeves or exposing my arms, they're covered. He lifted up his jacket's sleeve, careful not to touch this morning's additions to the collection of ugly scars. May and Kanashi couldn't help but stare at them. He wasn't kidding, they ran all the way up his arm, and the freckles dotted on top made it look like dozens of planets floating through a pale sky. And when she isn't doing anything she cuts herself, and when she does she calls me into her bedroom, and she tells me that I'm just like my dad. I never knew him, but it's safe to say it's not good. The green-haired boy had tears streaming down his face, and the other three in the room made the collective decision to hug him until their tears all ran dry. Nobody heard May whisper under her breath, but they all got the distinct feeling that things were going to be different from now on. This isn't how it's going to be forever, just you wait, I'm going to build us a world to love. Chapter text. A week and a half had passed before Izuku had to go back to his mother. There were missing posters up on every visible pole within a mile's radius of his house. There was no doubt in the boy's mind that they were posted up by Bakugo's mother and not his own, but nevertheless he had to go back before there was an actual police report filed and people came looking for him. When night fell upon the workshop, Izuku waited until both of the other boys were asleep before sneaking out. There was no way they'd simply let him leave after what they'd seen and heard. The walk was quiet and he took his time, looking at everything he passed with a new appreciation he hadn't had before. The night before he had come to the realization that if he wanted to help people, truly and on a larger scale, he would have to suffer through living with his mother, and that was okay. It was okay because if he could help more people anywhere near as much as he'd helped Kanashi and Shinso, the world could be a better place and he could have a hand in it. When his green eyes landed on the door knob, he didn't stop and knock. The whole neighborhood knew that the lock was broken, so he just let himself in. Immediately the memories came flooding back. The smell of alcohol lingered in the air stronger than ever and the whole front room was in disarray. The star of his nightmares herself was passed out on the couch with some staticky show playing in the background. The rest of the house was roughly the same and he began cleaning it from top to bottom, running on autopilot and knowing that she was going to have him do it either way. When he finished, it was just past 12 and he made his way to the room where he slept, eventually falling into a fitful sleep. There was a pounding coming from somewhere near the front of the house when he woke up, and for a moment he didn't recognize where he was. When he did realize the knocking was that much more frightening. Slowly he crept down the hallway, peeking around to see the front door where he spotted his mother barricading the door. Despite his mind screaming at him to shut up and go back to his room, he spoke up. "Who's at the door?" The question was simple enough, but Inko was already livid. "They're here for you. If you hadn't left I wouldn't be in this situation right now, but no. Poor little Izuku had to go and leave his mama all alone, and now the police are here to get us both." There was a lag in the conversation as he tried to process what she had just said. "Why would they be here for us both? I thought you said they were here for me." Despite the situation, it was kind of a novel experience for the 11-year-old to have a normal conversation with his mother. He only wished it was happening because she cared and not because she was too busy trying to block the door to really recognize who she was speaking with. "They're here because your friends tipped the police off to my house, this house, saying that I was abusing you. And they're here because you told your stupid meddling friends what I had done. Even after I explicitly told you not to tell anyone. If we make it out of here, you can bet your life you won't be seeing them again. The people, the police," Izuku reminded himself, were still banging on the door and yelling, and it was clear that their poor door was going to give no matter how many pieces of furniture the woman shoved in front of it. There were two options here. Number one, he sits and waits. His mother will be taken away because of the various scars littering his own body, and after that who knows what will happen to him. Perhaps he'll be discarded, maybe he'll get lucky and a hero will take him, but the most likely choice is the foster system, and he really didn't want to be in the foster system. So option number two it was. He forced his feet to move and shoved himself off the wall he was supporting himself on, moving to help his mother put the couch in front of the door, and after that all of the chairs in the dining room. No matter what they put up, it was never going to be enough, but they kept going until the only thing that wasn't in the entrance was the wall-mounted television. He was right though, it simply wasn't enough, and he was right again after a few weeks when he was sent to his first foster home. Weeks passed slower now that he couldn't see his friends, but that was what it was now. Slow weeks blurred into even slower months, some homes worse than others and nobody ever wanting to actually adopt him. So when an old couple with a one-story house took him on as their third foster kid, he had hope. He kept that hope right up until the moment they found out about his true quirk and hit him for the first time. But the first hit jolted him back into reality in that strange way it always had. Some sort of change had to be made, and he knew that, he always had. So he reminded himself where he was trying to go, and when he remembered it was the same place he had always wanted to be, it didn't seem so unreachable. All he wanted was to get to the top, but it was more than that now. It wasn't some flimsy dream, now he could do it. Him and Mei could really be the next top support item makers. And even further than that, he alone could be the best hero Japan had seen yet. Chapter text. He was glad for the stability that Cory and Mark offered him. They weren't good foster parents, but he knew at least that they wouldn't give him up. The only thing he couldn't handle about them was the fact that he'd have to give up Ua if he stayed. His 10 months with them could have been far worse, but with high school being just a little over a year away, he needed to work out a plan. Izuku knew what it would take to be a hero, let alone the best. His foster home couldn't provide that for him though. It wasn't that he needed a happy home, or even a healthy one, it's just that with 2 other fosters living in the house there wasn't enough money to go towards UA. He could hold everything about his mother against her, but he could never say she was broke. She did it begrudgingly of course, but she received a generous payment each month from one Yagi Toshinori. She never explicitly said it, but Izuku was pretty sure he was the man in the photo. That said, he needed her. He needed her out of prison. He needed her charges dropped. He needed to go back. His biggest problem was getting anyone to talk to him. He was a little boy, one they thought to be quirkless at that. Everything he said was ignored. He didn't know how to move forward. On a stroke of luck he found himself outside of the police station at the same time as an officer. He was crying out of frustration, another fruitless day, one more roadblock on his way to Ua, when the man stopped. He introduced himself as Kenji Suragame, the chief of police. Izuku could not believe his luck when he asked why he was crying. "I need my mom," he said it through tears and had never been so quick to lie. "They came to our house and they took her." He said it quietly, reliving her. Suragame took it hard. Here was a kid no older than 14 crying for his mom. He had to help. He had to know why. The police wouldn't do that without reason and the heroes would have come through with paperwork on the arrest. "I'm going to help you, kid, how about you come inside?" Suragame gestured towards the door as he said it and Izuku let out a sob of relief. He was going to be heard. He was going to Ua. All he had to do was lie. The office he was led into was messy. It was very clear that the chief of police spent a lot of time in this room. It was lived in, homey even. And though it was nowhere near the time to worry about it, Izuku craved a home, more than a house, more than a workshop with his friends. He wanted security and livelihood, peace and comfort, but for that he needs Ua. He focused on Suragame's words, "So I can pull up your file, kid." He may have missed something. "What? Your name, kid?" "Oh, Izuku Midoriya." There was a calm silence as the chief pulled up the file, no doubt finding the case on his mother closed and the photos of Midoriya's wounds. He knew he would need to lie, but it would need to be good to get past all of that. Suragame couldn't help his quiet seething. Child abusers were a different type of evil, and though the case was closed he couldn't help but wonder why the kid wanted his mom. She was evil. She hurt him. Was it just an irrational hope for better? Despite his better judgment he asked. And so the lies began. "I miss her," Izuku said, and before he could be cut off his eyes started watering and he blurted out the lie he came up with. "It wasn't her, I promise. She had this boyfriend hanging around for a while and he was the one who burned me and stuff. All of the pictures they took, everything was from him. And Mama didn't say anything because she loves him so much and she didn't want him to be in jail, and she didn't just sit by, she tried to get him to stop. She pleaded and cut herself, but it just wasn't enough. And it wasn't even my friends that told the police, like everyone was saying. There's this group of kids that bully me and I'm sure it was them calling as a joke, and I don't know why this went so far because I just want my mom back." Suragame just sat there as the boy rambled. He had the reports in front of him. His mother Inko had confessed for a lighter sentence and Izuku had kept silent through everything, giving to police his name and nothing more. Whoever wrote up the report noted that he was crying and kept glancing at his mother throughout their time at the station. How did they get it so wrong? He'd need to figure out how to collect everyone's official statements, but in the meantime he'd get the case reopened and get the kid some visitation to his mom. The young boy was staring at him, waiting, probably for some sort of confirmation he was being taken seriously. Izuku saw the moment the chief took the bait. He was going to get help. Ue was right in his grasp, he just had to wait for it to come together. When he was sent home, that night he was revitalized. He needed to get out. He was going to be someone, and that made him want to do something. Anything. He had thought about being a hero realistically. He knew that there was a chance he wouldn't be accepted into the hero course. That was what brought him to being a vigilante. He hadn't done anything yet, but he was going to. He was going to start. He just had one thing to do first. The walk to the beach was slow going. That was intentional on his part. He wasn't sure how his friends were going to take it and accept him back after he'd been gone for months. At first his foster parents hadn't allowed time for it. Then it was his anger at them that kept him away. They had no right. After that passed, it had just been too long. Now it had been a full year since he'd seen them. His 12th birthday had come and passed and he was approaching 13 more quickly than he was ready for. But he missed them and he needed them. The only one he'd kept up with was Kanashi, and while he knew the boy was likely keeping the others updated, it was time to update them himself. It was late, but he was hoping Mei would still be there. Shinso and Kanashi would for sure, but Mei always worried more than them. And she'd been the longest without seeing him too. It was only right. He was relieved to see her workshop light still on when he got there. They'd expanded like they talked about, and Izuku wished he'd been there to see it, to help. He would never get that time back with them, and he knew that. All he could do now is go back and try to be there for the rest of it. First though, he had to ask for forgiveness, starting with May. He went in through the extra shed entrance that would put him directly in her workshop, hopefully alone. The moment he walked in, he was hit with a wave of sadness. All of his memories, good and bad, of the girl and his friends flooded him. He remembered the first time he'd seen the workshop. How little 5-year-old Izuku thought the world spread out before him, how the years had faded and normalized that awe. He was brought back to it then, eternally grateful that some things really don't ever change. And then there was May, back turned but clearly the same. Her hair was longer now, pulled back into a ponytail but hanging past her shoulder blades. She was taller too, taller than Izuku was. She looked healthy. Her quiet humming filled the room, and he watched her for a few moments before he cleared his throat. May spun around looking like she'd seen a ghost. He wondered if his absence had really affected her so badly. They stood facing each other in silence for a few moments before he couldn't take it. He needed to know if she was okay, if they were going to be okay. "Hey Em." He was nervous, and she certainly heard the shake in his voice, but it was what she needed. She was across the room before he could say anything else, and he was in her arms in an instant. That was the first time in months that he had really relaxed. It felt natural to be there with her. Hugging her made him feel like everything really would be okay. He knew that things would be hard, that life would throw things at him. Even in their small workshop, he knew it would take some time to be okay. But it would work out. Because he had them. Everything that was thrown his way he could handle, as long as they were there to help. They were the ones shaping him. They had given him a torch when he was alone in the dark, and they would guide him to exactly where he needed to be. Not for the first time that day Midoriya cried. For the first time ever though, they were tears of joy. Chapter text. Everyone had received him well. His friends weren't pleased with his absence, but they didn't hold it against him. They knew that they should have asked, and both sides had plenty of time to feel bad about what happened. They chose to move on. To move forward. And forward they went. May went forward with her inventions, gaining access to new materials as she got older thanks to her parents. Her progress was astounding to everyone around her, and she wasn't stopping anytime soon. Shinso got really invested in personal defense training. He couldn't afford to go to proper classes, but he did watch them in videos online to help him get an idea of what he should be doing. He also began attending the self-defense classes at the community center, which Izuku had started going to quite some time ago. Kanashi had turned 9 quite recently and was going into 3rd grade as the brightest kid in his class, by far, as one might imagine given the people he had come to call family. That in itself was a step forward, and one more thing the Greenette had missed. He wouldn't miss anything like it again. Izuku for his part had actually only moved backwards as far as he could see. He fell back on old friends and was fighting for the right to depend on his mother once more. He did step back into one good thing though, hero studies. He brought back the notebooks and the documents and the tapes. In a way, moving back was the only way for him to move forward. That was how he'd always been, one step behind. But this slip into the past was not going to keep him down as it had before. He wouldn't let it. He had a plan, and if the world wouldn't make it easy, he would work and work and work until he had something he could love. The first step he had to take was the one he was most terrified of. He had to step into his role as Loki. He had to become what he always said he'd be. He had to become a hero. With a goal, though there was always an ever-growing list of things needed to reach it. It seemed to Izuku that he had something to add every day, but he cut himself off with his current list. He could add more when he was done. 1. Get a disguise, hide face, stature, and hair. 2. Find something to fight with, quirk, weapon, etc. 3. Find an appearance-altering quirk. For now, get makeup, cover injuries. 4. Get first aid stuff and learn how to administer it. 5. Get Inko out of jail. A. Tell her the cover story. B. Find someone to take the fall as the boyfriend. C. Maybe get a memory quirk to help with B. D. Get a lawyer. 6. Get hero patrol routes to avoid. 7. Visit Nezu, stop putting it off. 8. Find criminals. Though it was 7th on the list, he knew visiting Nezu had to come first. Nezu hadn't seen him since their initial meeting at UA, and though for a while there they'd talked very frequently, that had stopped with Izuku's most recent foster home. What that actually meant was that they hadn't spoken in nearly 11 months now. For a while there wasn't a choice. The laptop Izuku had built everything on was confiscated when he arrived at Cory and Mark's house. Once he had gotten it back though, he looked through all of the emails from UA's principal and thought it might be better if he was thought to be dead. Now though that wouldn't be an option, he was going to be working as a vigilante and under the name Nezu knew him by at that. It wasn't as though he didn't care about Nezu. He cared enough to check in on the guy as he did frequently, but the idea of being cared for threw Izuku for a loop. It was mind-boggling reading all of the worried emails Nezu had sent. At one point he almost deleted them entirely so he wouldn't have to face it. People could care for him. They weren't innately incapable. They simply choose not to. The first time he came to the realization, it made him so upset he threw up all night. That being said, Nezu deserved to know he was alive, but reaching out was too hard. So he did the only thing he could do. He clicked onto the chess forum he'd been using, hitting request match on rat_God's profile and waiting patiently for a reply. It was fairly late, around 10 p.m., so when the screen changed within the minute, Izuku was surprised. The words, Team White, overtook the laptop's screen, and Izuku couldn't help but get a little worked up over Nezu's acceptance of his branch. Things were going to be okay. They played a few matches before either party said anything, and when the good game came through, it seemed almost tentative. Like Nezu was scared he would disappear again if he said the wrong thing. Izuku hated himself for causing that. In repentance he decided that he would stop by soon, just to see his friend, but also to drop off the finished product of the project they had long since started. It was the closest he could get to an apology without saying anything, and if he said anything he was going to say everything. The heavy feeling that had swamped Midoriya's heart lightened considerably after talking to Nezu. A part of him wanted to tell the principal everything, but he knew he couldn't. The secondary benefit of talking to Nezu was that he could use his visitation outfit as his vigilante disguise until something better came along, and he could keep his chosen name. Things were coming together, and while in his mind this was 3 steps back, everyone else saw the 2 steps forward. And it was only a glimpse of the strides he was about to take. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.